After 101 paternity tests, I took my daughter and disappeared. I had been secretly married for 5 years to Felipe, the most famous actor in the country, and he had always been attentive and indulgent toward me. But the day his great love returned and saw our daughter, he kept his composure and coldly introduced her. She's just a little actress hired by the film crew. His great love pulled out a document and looked at me with an ironic smile. Felipe, stop fooling yourself. You know exactly whose child this is. This manipulative, loose woman has been deceiving you for years. When are you going to wake up? From that day on, Felipe never came home again. My daughter was still so little, too young to understand what was happening. She simply hugged me with her soft, childish voice and asked, "Mommy, what does bastard mean?" Daddy said I'm a little bastard. I fought back my tears with all my strength. In that moment, my heart died completely. Some time later, I left the divorce papers on the table and went far away with my daughter. Chapter 1. By the time I went for the 98th paternity test, the doctor didn't even bother to look at me properly. Mrs. Law, a mistake is a mistake. Admitting you've been unfaithful won't kill you. The nurse beside him rolled her eyes.
Exactly.
Why pretend to be decent after what you've done? What a waste of Mr. Law's love all these years. Once again, the report stated there was no biological relationship between Felipe Law and my daughter. Gritting my teeth, I turned to look for Felipe, but his agent blocked me at the door. Are you still going to push this, Sarah? You know perfectly well that girl isn't Felipe's. When you were sneaking around with another man, didn't you think about the consequences? Felipe is at the peak of his career. Do you have to ruin him? I've heard enough accusations like this already. But why should I admit to something I never did? What I couldn't understand was why, after visiting nearly every lab in the country, all of them claimed Felipe had no blood relation to our daughter. And since Felipe stopped coming home, it's been harder and harder to get samples from him. More than clearing my own name, what broke me was seeing how much my daughter was suffering. She's so small, how can she bear so much injustice? After yet another door slammed in my face, I returned home exhausted. The moment she heard my footsteps, my daughter ran to me for a hug. She wrapped her little arms around my neck and asked in her sweet voice, "Mommy, what's a bastard?" Daddy said I'm a little bastard. That word shattered my heart into 1,000 pieces. I held her tightly, trying to sound calm. Jessica is not a bastard. Jessica is Mommy's treasure. You wanted to go to Africa to see the big lions, right? I'll take you tomorrow, okay? Her eyes lit up instantly, and she nodded eagerly. Yes, yes. But I want Daddy to come with us too. I stayed silent for a few seconds before gently saying, Daddy won't come. Maybe he can never be with us again. The moment I finished, she burst into tears. With her eyes brimming with tears, she looked at me fearfully and asked, "Is it because Jessica was bad? Is that why Daddy doesn't love me anymore? Jessica will be good, I won't eat sweets, I won't watch cartoons." My chest tightened painfully. My daughter had always been obedient. Like all kids, she loved sweets, but Felipe used to say they were bad for her teeth. From then on, Jessica hardly touched them. Even when I offered, she would drool but say she didn't want any. She also loved cartoons, and Felipe used to watch them with her in his arms. But ever since he saw that paternity report, he never came home again. Every night, my daughter would ask when Daddy was coming back, and all I could do was lie that he was busy working. I gathered every strand of Felipe's hair left in the house. Every test was torture, because I didn't know how to tell my daughter that Felipe was not her real father. As I held her in my arms, I made up my mind. Felipe had proposed to me 101 times before I agreed to marry him. And if, after 101 tests, he still refuses to believe in me or our daughter, then Jessica and I will disappear from his life forever. Chapter 2. The next day, when I went to the company to submit my resignation, a colleague grabbed my arm and whispered, "Sarah, the internet is exploding. My favorite couple has finally appeared in public together." She had always been Felipe's #1 fan. I didn't want to listen, but she was already showing me the photos. Look. A paparazzi caught the great actor Felipe Law personally accompanying Sophia to an exhibition. They say Miss Sophia, heiress of the Sue family, was his childhood sweetheart. Felipe has stayed pure all these years, just for her. Oh my God, if they get married and have children, imagine how beautiful they'll be. Before she could finish, a familiar figure appeared not far away. It was Felipe, who had come with Sophia to visit the company. This media production firm belonged to the Law family, and I worked in crisis PR. When our eyes met, he's always pretended not to know me. That was what the prenuptial agreement we signed before our secret marriage required. Over the years, very few people knew my true relationship with Felipe. Many said the title of Mrs. Law I held no longer meant anything. I clenched the resignation letter in my hands and turned to leave, but Sophia stepped forward, grabbed my hand, and quietly asked, "Mrs. Sarah, how do you plan to handle the rumors about me and your husband?" Surely Felipe had been with Sophia all this time. She had just returned to the country and wasn't familiar with anything here, making this the perfect chance to rekindle her old story with Felipe. I knew how devastating past loves could be. 5 years of marriage meant nothing compared to a single sentence from a first love. But that didn't matter to me. I only wanted to know one thing, so I asked, "How did you know my daughter isn't Felipe's biological child?" Sophia's proud expression froze instantly. She glanced sideways at Felipe, then gave me a malicious smile. Do you think a man like Felipe, obsessed with emotional purity, would ever accept a second-hand wife? My chest tightened. How did she know about my past? Before I could say anything, Sophia happily ran to Felipe and, right in front of me, clung affectionately to my husband's arm. From their desks, some of my colleagues gave me knowing looks as if to say, "Look at them, obviously there's something going on." I chose not to look and turned toward the exit, but at that very moment, I saw my daughter running toward me. She threw herself into my arms, and when she looked past me, she saw Felipe. Doubt flickered in her big eyes. Why, was her father holding another woman's hand? In the blink of an eye, my daughter ran toward him, hugging his leg and saying in her sweet voice, "Daddy, Jessica missed you so much." There were employees everywhere. Felipe stiffened, and in front of everyone he said, "Little one, didn't I tell you that offset? You have to call me uncle?" My daughter glanced at me curiously, then ran back and whispered, "Mommy, if I call him uncle instead of daddy, will he love Jessica then?" I felt a sharp sting in my nose, but all I could do was grit my teeth and nod. As if she had been given great encouragement, she took my hand, walked firmly back to Felipe, and obediently said, "Uncle." But Felipe's face grew even darker. I took the opportunity to discreetly pluck a hair from him. He frowned, stepped back, and lowered his voice in warning. "Get your dirty hands off me. You can have another man, but I can't have another woman? That bastard you had with someone else, Ivy, helped raise him all this time. Isn't that enough for you?" I didn't answer. I didn't even get angry. I simply held my daughter and left. With that strand of hair, I conducted the 99th paternity test. The result was the same, no biological relation to Felipe. I bit my lip hard, fighting to keep myself from breaking down. "Felipe, you have 2 chances left." Chapter 3. On the way home, his words echoed in my mind, "That bastard you had with another man." The rage and grief I had been holding in for days suddenly burst. I ran to the hotel where Felipe was staying and kicked his door open. When he realized I had come for him, he looked at me coldly and said, "You want to know if she's a bastard? Take that man's ashes and do a paternity test." A chill ran through my entire body. The man he was talking about was my childhood friend. But he had died saving me. Though our relationship had always been close, we had never crossed the line. Why disturb the rest of the dead? Why couldn't he just trust me? The pain in my chest was so sharp, I could barely breathe. Holding onto the doorframe, I shouted, "Felipe, DNA tests can't be done with ashes. And even if they could, I would never let you insult him like that." Felipe's usually gentle and elegant face turned crimson with fury. He roared, "Sarah, you're still in love with him." Then Bengi slammed the door in my face. That night, I received a video from an unknown number. It was from Sophia. In the video, Felipe's back was turned as he played bumper cars with a little boy. Felipe had always loved car racing. When we were together, he always said he wanted a son with me so he could teach him to race. I used to ask what if it was a girl. He'd say that a girl like me should be protected and never allowed to play something so dangerous. On the day I went into labor, I told him I had a feeling it would be a boy. Felipe had kissed my forehead tenderly and said, "Silly, I love boys and girls just the same." But now here he was, playing with Sophia's son. Tears filled my eyes. My daughter came to me and hugged me gently, imitating the way I comforted her. "Mommy, don't cry, okay? When Jessica grows up, I'll buy you lots of candy." I hugged her tightly as tears streamed uncontrollably down my face. The next day, I went to the parent-child event at my daughter's kindergarten. I hadn't expected to see Sophia there with a boy who must have been her son. The boy peeked shyly out from behind her and looked at me, blinking, but didn't dare speak. When I finally got a clear look at his face, I froze. He looked far too much like Felipe's exact copy of him as a child. There had been rumors that Sophia had a child with Felipe before leaving the country, but after so many years together, I knew Felipe wasn't the type to sleep around. While my mind was spinning, a sharp cry tore through the playground from the slide. It only lasted a few seconds before falling silent. My daughter never cried over small scrapes. That cry could only mean something serious had happened. My heart seized, and I ran toward the sound. Sophia's son and my daughter had fought. The boy stood pale-faced, his arm broken, crying. My daughter was bleeding from her forehead and had lost consciousness. I felt my breath stop. I scooped her into my arms and ran to the hospital. Shaking with fury, Sophia shouted loudly in front of the doctors and nurses, "Does your daughter have rabies or what?" Her son bit his lip hard, letting the doctor set his arm without shedding a tear. Sophia's voice echoed down the hallway, but I didn't have the head to argue with her. I clung to the glass, watching as they tried to save my daughter. After a long while, she finally woke up. Her small body trembled in pain. From the bed, she looked at me. I tried to smile so she wouldn't be afraid, but the tears came first. She waved her little hand to tell me not to cry. Sophia kept talking nonstop. All this just because we didn't lend her a toy? What did Victor ever do to deserve this? "Sarah, is this how you raise your child? If Victor is left with any aftereffects, you'll pay for it." At that moment, a familiar voice sounded behind me. "Sarah, if you don't know how to raise children, you shouldn't have them at all." It was Felipe. But my daughter wasn't that kind of spoiled child. She was obedient, sweet, the best little human I had ever known. How could Felipe doubt her? I turned, ready to face him, when Felipe slapped me hard. It was the first time he had ever hit me. Before our marriage, he had sworn, "If I ever raise my hand against my wife, may I never have a good end." I had tried to stop him from making that promise, scolding, "If you can't even raise your voice at me, how could you hit me?" But I was wrong. The sting on my cheek was all too real. I couldn't even defend myself. When my daughter's bandages were finally done, I went straight to the paternity testing center. I had hair from Felipe and from Sophia's son, but I couldn't bring myself to hand them over. One thought kept circling in my mind. So I decided to take a maternity test with my daughter. When I received the results, those words, "no biological relationship," made my ears ring. The shock nearly knocked me off my feet. My daughter, without knowing, brought me some ice wrapped in a handkerchief and gently pressed it to my cheek. In her sweet, worried voice, she whispered, "Mommy, do you feel better?" My eyes burned. I didn't want her to notice anything was wrong, so I held her tightly in my arms. Whose child was she, really? And then where was my real son? This was paternity test number 100. "Felipe, you only have one last chance." Chapter 4. When we got home, my daughter came straight to me to explain what had happened. "Mommy, I didn't actually fight with the little brother. That lady hit me on the head with a stone and then broke the little brother's hand. Mommy, that lady is scary. Jessica is scared." A wave of fury shot through me. "Do what you want of me, but don't touch my daughter." I sent someone to track down Sophia. I didn't expect to find her visiting a film set. Perfect. I'd settle the score with both of them. When I arrived, carrying my daughter in my arms, Sophia was watching Felipe play with her son at a short distance. I set my daughter down and, without a word, slapped Sophia across the face. Sophia dared to lay a hand on my daughter again. Blood welled at the corner of Sophia's lips. Just as she was about to explode, Felipe's thunderous voice cut through the air. "Sarah, what the hell are you doing?" Before I could react, Felipe slapped me again. But this time, I didn't just stand there. I gave him 2 slaps in return. It was Sophia who hurt her own son and our daughter. If you don't believe me, check the security cameras. Felipe froze for a moment, then shouted, "You're insane. What kind of mother would break her own son's arm?" He raised his hand again to hit me, but at that moment my daughter hurled herself at him. Using her small body, she shoved Felipe with all her might, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. You can't hit mommy. You're a bad daddy. Jessica doesn't love you. We don't love you." A ringing filled my ears. My daughter's tiny body shielded me from every gaze. Felipe also froze for a few seconds. When he tried to approach me, my daughter pushed him away with all her strength. "Stay away. Don't touch my mommy." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she tenderly stroked my swollen face, then grabbed my hand to lead me away. "Mommy, let's go. Jessica never wants to see daddy again." Seeing her resolve, my heart closed completely too. But just as we turned to leave, Felipe grabbed my hand. Chapter 5. His whole body was trembling, his voice barely a whisper. "Sarah, if you don't know how to raise a child, then you don't deserve to wear that jade bracelet." The jade bracelet on my wrist had been Felipe's wedding gift to me when I married into the Law family. It was a family heirloom and also the symbol of the official wife of the Law family. His words from that day still echoed in my mind. From today, Sarah is the lady of the Law family. My only lawful wife. I would have forgotten it if he hadn't mentioned it now. But when I took it off to return it, I noticed something. The protective charm my daughter wore around her neck was now hanging from Sophia's son. I knelt down and asked my daughter what had happened. There was fear in her eyes, but she had never lied to me. In a small voice, she said, It was that lady." The little brother said Jessica's charm was very pretty, and then the lady took it from me. Before I could respond, Sophia let out a mocking laugh. "That charm? I asked monks for it 3 years ago on a mountain. Now you're accusing me just because you lost something?" Felipe's face was already dark, but at her words, it grew even darker. Gripping my daughter's wrist, he demanded, word by word, "Jessica, since when did you learn to lie?" It was the first time Felipe had ever shouted at her. My daughter froze completely, clinging to the hem of my clothes. She didn't even dare to cry. Stammering, she said, "No, I didn't lie, I didn't." My chest felt like it was being torn apart. I glared at Felipe. Enough. Before he could react, I scooped at my daughter and left without looking back. I wasn't giving Felipe a single chance more. This time, I was truly determined to leave him. I don't even know what I was feeling when I went for the final paternity test. I used Victor's blood, Sophia's son, and Felipe's hair. The wait felt like a lifetime. Paternity test number 101 confirmed my suspicion. Victor was Felipe's biological son. I was drained, completely out of strength. "Felipe, this time, it's really over." I bought the plane tickets. When I returned home to pack, Felipe appeared, saying he had come to apologize. Victor just told me he's the one who lost the charm. He was afraid Sophia would scold him, so he kept the one he found. He said his little sister cried a lot, and he wants to return it. "Sarah, why is it that other people's children know how to behave like this? You should reflect." Felipe kept talking and talking. I only listened with cold indifference. Sensing my chill, he grew uneasy and said, "It's late. You should sleep. I'm going to take a shower." Did that mean he planned to stay? But my daughter was already afraid of him. Just as I was about to tell him to leave, Sophia called. "Felipe, Victor has acute gastroenteritis. I don't know what to do." Felipe's expression changed, and without even grabbing his coat, he ran out. The next day, already in the departure lounge, I glanced toward the entrance. My daughter tugged at my sleeve in indignation. She raised her little fist and said, "Mommy, don't be afraid. If the bad daddy comes, Jessica will hit him." I smiled and gently stroked the scar on her forehead. Then I sent Felipe a digital copy of the divorce agreement. The next second, his call came through. I didn't answer. I turned off my phone and boarded the plane without looking back. Chapter 6. Felipe, disbelieving, dialed my number again. From the speaker came a cold, mechanical voice. "We're sorry. The number you have dialed is turned off." I had never refused his calls before. This was the first time. Felipe gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. He muttered to himself, "Divorce? Is she really that angry?" But nothing happened between Sophia and me. "Sarah, why are you upset?" Frowning, he sent me several text messages. "In the law family, there has never been a divorce. You don't need to use that threat on me." "Sarah, do you really have no apology to offer after all this time? If you admit you were wrong now, I'll come home tonight." His messages vanished into the void. Beside him, his agent let out a sarcastic laugh. "What? Sarah wants to divorce you? Ridiculous. That woman is starting to think she's far too important. Felipe, if Miss Sue is interested in you, why don't you just..." Felipe cut him off with a deadly glare and said coldly, "My family affairs are none of your business." The truth was, it had been that very agent who forced me to sign the prenuptial agreement. He said that if it were discovered Felipe was married, his public image would suffer. Thinking of his career, I drafted that contract myself. At first, Felipe had refused it, had been eager for the whole world to know I was Mrs. Law. But he could never say no to me. That was the day the seed of doubt was planted. Felipe believed I was unwilling to go public because I still had feelings for my old love. He had seen me sobbing uncontrollably at the funeral of my childhood friend, thinking it was some doomed love I still carried in my heart. He even began doubting himself, as though he could never compete with a dead man. It became a thorn lodged deep in his chest. For all these years, he had tried his hardest to please me, hoping that one day I would love him back. Until that night, I didn't answer a single one of his messages. Felipe finally broke. He called over 100 times, but I kept my phone switched off. When filming wrapped on set, his anger had already mixed with unease. He drove straight home. But when he opened the door, his breath caught. The house was empty. Nothing remained, only the scribbles on the wall from his daughter proved life had once been there. With his back rigid against the wall, Felipe stood frozen, mind blank. Before he could recover, a new scandal online shook him completely. Felipe playing bumper cars with his biological son, actor Law secretly married with a child confirmed. Actor Law's image collapses, fans in tears. Felipe rushed back to the company, where chaos reigned. All the employees were waiting for his decision. When he arrived, Sophia quickly approached to apologize. "Felipe, I'm sorry. I don't know how this happened. I don't know which paparazzi dared to take those photos." Before she could finish, Felipe's cold gaze cut her off. His voice was more distant than ever. "That day, the entire racetrack was under my control. Not even a mosquito could have gotten in. Sophia, what we had ended the day you left the country to get married and have a child. We both have our own families. Stop living in a fantasy." Sophia's expression froze for a second, but then, biting her lip, she pressed on. "What if Victor really is your son?" Felipe frowned. "What did you say?" Sophia handed him a paternity report. "I didn't leave the country to get married. I left to give birth to your child, no matter the obstacles." She paused, watching Felipe's stunned reaction, and continued, "Just like Sarah, women in love will do anything." Felipe felt as though lightning had struck through him. He murmured over and over that it couldn't be possible. At that moment, his assistant rushed in. "Mr. Law, without manager Sarah, the PR team doesn't know how to handle this. We need your instructions." Felipe gritted his teeth. "What do you mean manager Sarah isn't here?" The assistant hesitated. "Sarah resigned the same day you came to the office with Miss Sophia." A sharp pain shot through Felipe's chest. Had I planned it all along? With trembling hands, Felipe sent me a message. "Sarah, where are you? Let's talk." But a second later, his phone rang. It was the lawyer. "Mr. Law, your wife told me that if you don't sign the divorce papers within a week, she authorizes me to proceed with legal action. If this goes to court, your public image will be seriously damaged. I advise you to sign as soon as possible." Felipe exploded. "Get out. In the Law family, there is no such thing as divorce." Meanwhile, I was taking my daughter to see zebras, tigers, and lions on the African savanna. On the way back, we went straight to my hometown. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with news about Felipe and Sophia's romance. I couldn't have cared less. Once we arrived, I started preparing to open a bakery. My daughter loves sweets and pastries. I want to make them just for her. I also had someone investigate my daughter's biological parents, but there was no news. I don't know who they are, but I want to give her a sweet, complete childhood. If her parents don't want her, then I do. While I was busy looking at shop spaces, my daughter came running with my phone in hand. Mommy, the bad daddy posted your marriage certificate online. I was a little surprised. Felipe had made our marriage public now.
Just then the doorbell rang.
I quickly went to open it. Standing there was Felipe. Chapter 7. I frowned slightly, only to hear his hoarse, low voice.
Why?
Why are you doing this to me? I was a bit stunned. Wasn't the divorce agreement clear enough? Or had the lawyer not told him? Looking at the haggard Felipe in front of me, I replied coldly, sign it as soon as possible. Using me as a shield to protect your true love, that's just like you, Felipe. Seeing the sarcasm in my expression, Felipe thought for a moment before finally realizing what I meant. During the scandal with Sophia, suddenly posting our marriage certificate had been like throwing me into a bottomless pit. And why should I be the scapegoat? Felipe's jaw tightened, his face dark as he stared at me. Before, when I wanted to make it public, you refused. And now that another woman wants to take your place, I can't even defend it. I stared at him in disbelief. Was he actually trying to make it sound like he did it for my own good? I let out a cold laugh and reached out to close the door, but Felipe stopped it firmly. Leaning against the frame, he looked at me and said, word by word, this time it was my mistake. I shouldn't have stayed away from home so long out of pride. Sarah, can we not get divorced? Before I could answer, my daughter came running out, clutching her peachwood toy sword. Bad daddy, stay away. Don't touch my mommy. Jessica kept shoving him over and over with her toy sword, her expression fierce. That sword made by Felipe himself was her treasure. I remember how, with her in his arms, he used to say, when Jessica grows up, she'll be a heroine and she'll protect mommy. My little girl, she really did keep that promise. Taking advantage of Felipe's stunned silence, I slammed the door shut. Seconds later, a desperate sob came from the other side. It was the first time I had ever seen Felipe cry. Strangely, I felt absolutely nothing. A few days later, I finally discovered the truth about my daughter's origins. She had been abandoned. Her biological parents didn't want her. I let out a sigh of relief. Deep down, I had a selfish fear that her real parents might come to take her away from me. I couldn't bear it. Even if she wasn't my biological daughter, I loved her. But in the last section of the file, I found something even more shocking. The baby I had given birth to after 10 months of pregnancy was Victor. Victor was my son with Felipe. The moment I learned this, I didn't hesitate. I took my daughter and went to find Victor. After a few days of watching from a distance, I noticed that Victor was always accompanied by bodyguards except when he was at kindergarten, as if they feared he might escape. The kindergarten security guard knew me well, so I asked him to let us in, and finally, we found Victor alone. He was sitting in a corner, watching the other kids play with envy. Every now and then, he scratched at his arm, and when I looked closely, I saw the scabs of old wounds. Fighting back tears, I walked over with my daughter and asked softly, Victor, how did you get those injuries? At first, he didn't want to speak, but with gentle reassurance from both me and my daughter, he finally broke down in tears. It turned out Sophia had been abusing him all these years. His body was covered in scars, old wounds that hadn't healed before new ones appeared. That was why he hadn't cried when he broke his arm, was terrified of Sophia's beatings. She even forced him to call her mom in public, but at home she made him sleep in a corner like a dog and fed him spoiled food. My fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms, rage boiling inside me. In the end, all I could do was gently stroke his head and say softly, Victor, would you like to come live with me? Chapter 8. Victor's tear-filled eyes seemed hesitant, but my daughter immediately ran to grab his hand. Big brother, I have lots of toys, I can give them all to you. And mommy knows how to make cakes theory delicious. Come with us, okay? Victor finally nodded and murmured, Ma'am, I want to go home to get the toy car my little sister gave me. It's my favorite. My throat tightened, and I nodded at once. All right, Victor. You're such a good boy. I'll see you here tomorrow, okay? As I left the kindergarten, I spotted a familiar figure. Felipe seemed to have been there for quite some time. He walked toward me, guilt heavy in his eyes. Sarah, I was wrong. Victor is my son. I glanced at him sideways. Yes, I know. How do you know? Felipe looked stunned, but quickly began to explain. Sarah, believe may never touch Sophia. I don't even know how she got my sperm. It turned out Felipe knew nothing either. I brushed past him with a cold smile, took my daughter's hand, and left without looking back. The next day, I made a cake shaped like a toy car and went early to wait at the same corner by the kindergarten. My daughter was cheerful, humming and dancing. After a while, she held my hand and asked, Mommy, can we tell Victor to call you Mommy too? Warmth filled my chest. I stroked her hair and kissed her cheek. You don't mind sharing Mommy with him? She shook her head with an adorably firm expression. Of course not. Last time that bad woman hit me with a stone, it was Big Brother who protected me. Tears pricked my eyes. These two children, they were my treasures. Time passed, but Victor never appeared. My unease grew with every minute. We waited until nightfall, but he never came. Without hesitation, I drove to Sophia's house, but no one knew where she was. With no other choice, I went to Felipe. He didn't know Sophia or Victor's whereabouts either, but seeing my anxiety, Felipe seemed to suspect something. He looked at me cautiously and asked, Why do you care so much about Victor? I didn't answer. Instead, I threw 2 DNA reports at him. Holding the papers, Felipe began to tremble. Victor is our son? He's our son. Then he looked at our daughter and suddenly burst into laughter, but the tears came first. He seemed on the edge of madness, his expression unreadable joy or pain. Chapter 9. I went straight to the police, but since Sophia and Victor hadn't been missing for 24 hours yet, they couldn't open a case. So I mobilized every contact and resource I had to find them. My daughter held my hand, trying to comfort me. Mommy, don't worry. Big Brother will be fine. Before she could finish, I received a call from an unknown number. Without thinking, I answered. Sophia's cold voice slithered into my ear. Sarah, your reach is far too long. You're lucky to see your son again in this life. But you know children are tools to climb higher. Don't you know how to use them? Don't worry, I'll give you a demonstration. It was her, without a doubt. Ever since Felipe had posted our marriage certificate, Sophia had become the laughingstock of the city. People even began to question whether Victor was really her child. The Sue family, tired of her antics, had completely abandoned her. Ruined and adrift, it was only natural she'd want revenge. After hanging up, she sent me a video of Victor, unconscious, lying at the edge of a cliff by the sea, with Sophia holding a gleaming knife. That place was known as Death's Corner. It was said that anyone who fell there would be swallowed instantly by monstrous, waves no one had ever survived. I drove at full speed to the site. From a distance, I saw Sophia pressing the knife to Victor's neck. He wasn't crying, but when he saw me, a spark lit in his lifeless eyes. I could read the word on his lips. Mom, swallowing my tears, I covered my daughter's eyes and whispered in her ear, Jessica, stay here. Count to 100, and Mommy will be back. She gripped my hand tightly, sadness clouding her gaze. Okay, Jessica will be good. But Mommy, don't lie to me. Jessica only has you. I hugged her tightly, as tears streamed down my face. Jessica, if Mommy doesn't come back, what will happen to you and Victor? Wiping my face, I got out of the car. Behind me, her small voice began to count 1, 2, 3 to the sound of her counting. I pulled out the knife I had brought with me and walked towards Sophia, step by step. When she saw me approaching with the blade in hand, a flicker of surprise crossed her eyes before she laughed with disdain. What's the matter? You here to die with me? Sophia sneered. I'm warning you. Sarah, take one more step and I'll make sure your son dies right in front of you. I walked forward slowly, an odd smile curling my lips. I have a proposal me life for my sons. What do you say? Sophia froze for a moment, but within seconds she broke into a manic laugh. Of course, Sarah. How clever you are. If you kill yourself, maybe Felipe will love me, and I'll finally be Mrs.
Law.
Ha ha ha. I stopped 1 meter away from her, the sea wind roaring wildly at my side. Half a meter ahead, the abyss. Waves smashed violently against the rocks below. Sophia, eyes bloodshot, screamed at me. Come on, Sarah. Do it. Stab yourself in the heart. If you die, I'll let your son go. And then, a familiar voice echoed from a distance. Sarah.
Please no, it was Felipe.
Behind him, our daughter clutched my phone, sobbing uncontrollably. Daddy, please save Mommy. I don't hate you anymore, just save her. I took a deep breath and looked at the two adults before me. Don't let the children see this. Before they could react, I lifted the gleaming blade and drove it straight into my heart. Sophia's eyes went wide as blood began soaking the front of my clothes. Before her disbelieving gaze, I slowly collapsed. The world seemed to stop. Even the children's cries faded away. Felipe, frozen in place, held his hands over our daughter's eyes. Sophia, seeing my lifeless body, grew excited. She slowly lowered the knife from Victor's neck, came closer, and kicked me a couple of times. When she was convinced I was dead, she burst out laughing. Dead? Ha ha, just like that? Weren't you the one with the unbreakable spirit? You couldn't even die in childbirth, but now you do this?
Ha ha ha.
Felipe, did you see? Sarah killed herself. I never touched her. Now we can live as a family of 4-inch. She never finished the sentence. In an instant, I lashed out with a strong kick, sending her stumbling toward the cliff's edge. Completely off guard, Sophia tumbled into the void. Just before she vanished, I tossed in front of her a retractable knife and a bag of fake blood. What's the matter? Did you think you were the only one who knew how to swap a cat for a rabbit? Her shrill, hateful screams were swallowed by the monstrous waves. I didn't look again. I went straight to Victor, who was trembling in fear, and wrapped him tightly in my arms. My daughter ran to me as well, throwing herself into my embrace in tears. Holding them both, I looked up and met Felipe's bloodshot eyes. I had truly scared him. In that moment, when the blood had splattered into his vision, I saw something I had never seen before: hatred, rage, desperation. He was determined to avenge me.
But I didn't need him to.
Some things I had to resolve myself. Sophia had schemed for everything, all for the title of Mrs. Law, but she underestimated what Felipe felt for me. Perhaps even in death, she would never understand why he loved me so deeply. No one knew that in the past, I had saved Felipe's life. It was our secret. No one understood why the heir of the Law family had fallen in love with me at first sight. When he saw me walking toward the car with both children, Felipe couldn't hold back anymore and came over. Love, can't you forgive me for the children's sake? I shouldn't have doubted you. It doesn't matter if they're mine or not. If you love them, I'll raise them with you. I know I was wrong. I just ask you to look at me. I placed the children in the car and turned to him. Felipe, you're not worthy. His face went pale. He stood there in shock for a few seconds, then suddenly dropped to his knees. No, Sarah, please give me another chance. I can't live without you. Another chance? I truly laughed then. Hadn't I been giving him chance after chance every time I went for yet another paternity test? Back then, he had no idea the soul-crushing pain I was enduring. And now he came asking for another chance? Ridiculous. I left him there, kneeling, as I got into the car with my children and drove away. A week later, I received the signed divorce papers. Felipe had transferred all his properties to me, an unnecessary gesture, clearly an attempt at redemption. During our marriage, I had never stopped working. My savings were more than enough to raise 2 children. But if he wanted to give it all away freely, why not accept it? That night, Felipe called me. Sarah, I was kind to Sophia only because of Victor. He looks so much like me, but I was afraid. Afraid he really was my son. Afraid you'd think I cheated on you. I cut him off. But I chose to trust you. From the beginning, I was searching for the truth. When love can't erase doubt, the truth is the only solution. But you, Felipe, never trusted me the way I trusted you. On the other end of the line came the sound of uncontrollable sobbing. I knew Felipe regretted it. His mistake was unforgivable. Knowing I was willing to give my life for him, he still doubted me, still believed I hadn't let go of another man. From the doorway came the sweet voices of Victor and Jessica. Mommy, Happy New Year. The clock on the wall struck midnight. Fireworks lit up the sky. It was a new year. The two children approached, holding a little cake, sweet and adorable. And just then, from the other end of the phone came the deafening screech of tires. Felipe's voice trembled. "Sarah, I'm sorry, but I swear I truly loved you." Then, a thunderous explosion erupted on the line. After a long silence, I hung up without mercy. Turning back to the children, I blew out the cake's candle and kissed each of them on the cheek. "Happy New Year, my loves."